Just before midnight on October 19th, 2015, police in Hot Springs, Arkansas, received a 911 call from a woman named Heather Reed. Heather told police that her father, Eric Reed, had shot and killed her mother and her sister. When police arrived to the scene, they found Eric Reed in his driveway out by the road waiting for police. They got him down on the ground and cuffed him. And according to police, a juvenile male came outside and yelled at Eric Reed, "I hope you rot in hell for this," to which the police say Eric Reed responded, "You're the cause of this." According to police, in the home at the time of the murders lived Eric Reed, his wife Laura Reed, and his two adult daughters, Mary Ann Reed and Heather Reed, along with Mary Ann's two minor children. I believe Laura was the mother of Heather, but not the mother of Mary Ann. But according to what Eric Reed told police, Laura, Heather, and Mary Ann had gone out for a girls' day. Laura and Mary Ann drank, but Heather didn't because she was pregnant. At some point after they got home, Laura and Mary Ann decided that they wanted to get more beer. Argument started in the garage with Eric because Laura had been unhappy and was talking about divorce. Mary Ann was taking Laura's side. Mary Ann and Eric had their own argument because Mary Ann had a child that had ADHD, and Eric felt like he had done the best job for the child, got him, disciplined and a good diet going, but Mary Ann did not make him eat vegetables, and that just really ticked off Eric, who was the child's grandfather. Mary Ann came and told her sister, I think it's going down, whatever that's supposed to mean, and then Eric just went to his room, grabbed a weapon. He shot Laura first several times and then did the same thing to Mary Ann several times. Mary Ann ran away and he ran after her. After it was over with, Heather says that he threw the gun in the backyard. According to Eric, Heather told him to get rid of the gun, and then he went and stood out by the road. So Eric's defense was that he was not criminally responsible at the time of the act because he lost his mind. But a psychologist found that he was criminally responsible because he knew enough to get rid of the gun and go wait for police, meaning that he knew that what he had done was wrong. Eric was charged with 2 counts of capital murder, and in 2018, he was found guilty and sentenced to the death penalty. He has filed an appeal through the Arkansas State Court. His conviction was upheld at that point. This is probably the most horrific SA case I have ever done a video about. I have done a video on this case before. It's been a long time ago. It was when it first happened, and I was asked to make another video. So I said I would, but this case, it really just lives in my brain. The information, once you hear it, you cannot forget it. So today I'm talking about Thomas Kaufman and Amber Lee Patterson. This is a case out of Van Buren County, Arkansas. So Thomas Kaufman was married to a woman named Katie Kaufman, and together they had 6 young children when Katie died in 2018. I wouldn't normally mention Katie's death, but Katie's death actually plays a central role in this case because according to the children, about a week after their mother died, their father started abusing them. There was heavy-duty sexual abuse and also some very serious physical abuse that occurred to these children. They reported seeing their father hit one of their sisters in the mouth so hard that her lip was bleeding, that he hit one of them with a belt so hard that a line was left on their buttocks for almost a week. These young children were abused so badly that they would see their father's leg move a certain way and just know that he was about to grape them. And they told police that if they saw that, they would run from him. They would run and hide to try to save themselves. Thomas didn't just grape his children. He made them also perform certain acts on each other, the girls and the boys. Not even just that, but there were certain incidents where there were dogs involved. Thomas would take pictures of his children while they were trying to bathe or take showers. He would make them pose and pose with each other. The children said that when Thomas would abuse them, it was extremely painful to them. And after they were taken by DHS and Thomas was arrested, they were given exams, and one of the children had to actually be taken to Arkansas Children's Hospital to be further evaluated due to injuries that the child had. Honestly, that's just about as deep as I can get into this story without just really telling all of the specifics of the case. And I don't want to tell the specifics of the case because the children involved in the case don't deserve that. I will say that somewhere along the way, Thomas Kaufman started dating a woman named Amberly Patterson. And Amberly Patterson worked as a nurse, I believe a CNA, in an actual facility. And the children came to her and told her some of what was happening and that her own children were also being abused. And she told them to keep it quiet. When Amberly was questioned by police, the police asked her, why didn't you file a report? And Amberly responded that she didn't file a report because she still had stuff at Thomas's house that she wanted to get out of Thomas's house. And whenever she was asked about Thomas's children, she basically said they're not her kids and not her problem. As a parent, honestly, I just cannot believe that the protection of children is your problem, whether they're your children or not. Because if you wouldn't want that happening to your own children, you shouldn't want it happening to another child. Now, there is another person who lived in the residence with Thomas Kaufman, according to police, and she was also questioned. She actually told police that Amberly knew what was happening to the children because that was the subject of a lot of fights and the reason that Amberly kept leaving Thomas. She said that there were cameras in the house, and as part of Amberly returning, an agreement was that Amberly would have access to those cameras, and that Amberly just became obsessive checking the cameras because you couldn't store things on the cameras. It was just like you had to catch them in the moment. And so Amberly became obsessive about looking at what was going on in the cameras. Now, honestly, yes, 110%, I believe that Amberly knew what was going on, but I have more questions than answers about this person. And I'm not going to reveal their name because they haven't been charged. I literally just checked. But you're living with Thomas Kaufman, and don't you also know what's going on? And why didn't you call the police? Anyway, so Amberly was arrested and charged with endangering the welfare of a minor first degree and 2 counts of endangering the welfare of a minor second degree. Amberly's own children were taken by DHS, and she also has recently been charged with violating an order of protection because there was a no contact order involving her 2 children that were victims. But Amberly blatantly went against that order and not only contacted those 2 children, but went and spent the night with them. Of course, Thomas Kaufman was also arrested. He was charged with 4 counts of rape and 3 counts of grooming a child. He has been moved to a few different facilities, but right now he is being held in the Stone County Detention Center. Now, I do want to mention one more thing that has been brought up to me multiple times. That's that Thomas Kaufman's sister is actually a deputy for the Van Buren County Sheriff's Department. The concern seems to be that Thomas Kaufman's sister could help him get out of trouble, or her connection to the Van Buren County Sheriff's Office could help him get out of trouble. I don't know. I did check. It does seem like she is employed there. Her name is Breezy Marriott. I don't know. I don't know where she stands on it. Let's just hope that she cares more about these 6 little kids that didn't deserve this than she does about a grown man who literally could have done anything else in life, but he chose to rape his own kids. Did a 17-year-old father murder his precious, innocent 4-month-old baby? A detective with the Bella Vista Police Department believes, yeah, he did. According to an affidavit on March 4th, 2024, police in Bella Vista, Arkansas were notified about a 4-month-old child that was unconscious and not breathing.
According to the father, he placed the baby, the 4-month-old, on a bed so that he could prepare a bottle for the baby. When the baby got about 75% done with that bottle, he closed his eyes and his body just became limp. Now, the dad said at first he thought that this was perfectly normal. The baby had just fallen asleep from drinking the bottle and that was over with. But at some point, the father says that he started to panic. The father said that he tried to call his own mother at work. She did not answer her phone. He tried to call the baby's mother, who is the father's girlfriend, at work. She did not answer the phone. He tried to call his mom again. His mom still did not answer the phone. Eventually, 911 was called and the baby was taken to Mercy Hospital. Now, at Mercy Hospital, the police were there and did try to start an investigation. They interviewed the father. They tried to talk to hospital personnel, and hospital personnel said that the baby was stabilized and the baby would be taken by helicopter to either Little Rock Children's Hospital or Kansas City Hospital. But they also told police that this was a cardiac event and there was no sign of child abuse. So I think the police were like, okay, cool. It was a cardiac event. There's nothing more that we can do here. It wasn't until later that same day that a social worker from the hospital in Kansas City, where the baby was taken, called the police in Bella Vista to inform them that the little baby had a brain bleed. The caseworker told police that the baby's eyes were fixed and dilated with little to no response. Even though Mercy Hospital back in Arkansas felt like this was a cardiac event with no sign of trauma, Kansas City did not feel the same. The hospital in Kansas City felt that this was a non accidental trauma. They believed that this was the result of the baby being shaken. The hospital in Kansas City did so many tests. They did x-rays, MRIs, eye tests, brain scans, and even more. Now, they found that there was a brain bleed, scarring behind both eyes, another bleed in the lower part of the spine, and fractures at the base of both femurs. The grandfather of the baby confirmed that his son was the only person that was around that baby that day. There was no one else in the home. The other children were at school. The paternal grandmother was at work. The paternal grandfather was at work, and the mom was at work. All 4 of the adults were interviewed, and all 4 confirmed that the baby did not have injuries prior to this. The baby had not been involved in an accident, and the father was the only person that was around the baby. The family made the horrific, difficult decision to take the baby off of life support, and on April 7th, 2024, the baby died. From what I can tell, Bryce Anderson, the father of the baby, was pretty consistent in his story, except at one point he did throw in that the baby threw up and had a little bit of blood in it. But that's really it. He just maintained that he fed the baby, laid the baby there on the bed while he was making the bottle, fed the baby. The baby fell asleep, and then he waited almost an hour and started to panic. After poring over the medical records of the baby and speaking to child abuse medical experts, the Bella Vista detective did decide to charge Bryce Anderson with 1 count of first-degree murder and also first-degree domestic battery. Bryce Anderson, who, like I said, is only 17 years old, was placed in a juvenile facility and he was held on a $500,000 bond. I haven't seen anything saying that he bonded out of that facility, so he's probably still in there. There has been no information released on the name of the victim or anything else except for that the victim was 4 months old. If there is more information that is released, I will certainly update.
An Arkansas couple who was charged with the death of a child back in July has now been hit with another capital murder charge. So on July 7th, Deja and Justin Rollins, who live in Jacksonville, Arkansas, took one of their children, a 3-year-old, to Arkansas Children's Hospital to be treated for what hospital personnel thought seemed like heat exhaustion. When police got to the hospital, they started questioning the couple about where their other children were because they had 4 other children who were between the ages of 2 and 10. The Rollins refused to tell police where their children were located, but the children were later found to be in a car in the Arkansas Children's Hospital parking lot. Again, this was in July. On July 7th in Little Rock, the high temperature was 90 degrees that day. One of the children that was located inside the car, the 2-year-old, died on July 8th, the next day. At that time, Justin and Deja were arrested and charged with 5 counts of first-degree domestic battery, 5 counts of neglect of a vulnerable person, 5 counts of endangering the welfare of a minor, 1 count of animal cruelty, and 1 count of obstructing governmental operations. Now, on the 8th, when that child died, they were charged with capital murder in that child's death. Now, Deja and Justin have been charged with another count of capital murder after their 3-year-old died. Their 3-year-old, I believe, is the one that was taken to the hospital to begin with. That child died from her injuries. It doesn't specify what those injuries are, outside of saying that they stem from child abuse and neglect. I can't imagine that there's any way this couple would walk free from this. I can't imagine that there's any way that they won't spend a significant amount of time in prison. Of course, that is assuming that the Arkansas criminal justice system works like it's supposed to. The parents of a 2-month-old baby gave him away for beer and the promise of a cashier's check at a later date. On September 21st, the manager of Hideaway Campground in Benton County contacted 911 in Benton County to say that a couple that had been staying at the campground gave their baby boy away for a case of beer and the promise of a $1,000 cashier's check. When police responded to the scene, they saw a baby boy that needed medical care. Police spoke to individuals at the campground and they learned that a couple had been staying there for a while. They continually went around asking people for beer. It was a frequent thing. On this particular day, they asked someone for beer and the person was like, nah, not going to do that. So they went back to the camper that they were staying at. It seems like some of the other people that were staying there at the campground had gathered together. Maybe they were just hanging out. And one man who was pretty intoxicated decided that he was going to go to the camper that the couple with the baby were staying in and give them some beer. The intoxicated man, it seemed like, was concerned about the baby and just wanted the baby to be okay for the night. So he went and asked the parents of the baby if the baby could come stay with him for that night, if he could just watch the baby. And in exchange, he gave them beer. That man, who was driving a side-by-side, showed back up to where his friends were with the baby, who was wearing only a diaper and the baby's diaper bag. Shailene Ehlers and Darren Urban, who were the parents of the baby, had a discussion after the baby was gone. So they decided to go back up to where all the people were staying, all the other people, where their baby was now at, and tell the people that they would give them the baby permanently, like an adoption, for a case of beer and a $1,000 cashier's check. The cashier's check that they weren't even getting until Monday, so 2 days later. In order to make it official until they could make it permanent, they decided to write out on a piece of paper that they were doing this and have someone else record it as they signed it. What they wrote out said, I, Darren Urban, and Shailene Ehlers are signing over our rights to Cody Martin, who was the man that signed the papers, of our baby boy for $1,000 on 9/21/2024. That document is signed by Darren Urban and Shailene Edwards. It then goes on to say, disclaimer, after signing this, there will be no changing y'all two's minds and to never contact again. So police had that. They also had the recording of the two parents signing that document. They also spoke to a woman at the campground. The woman said that when the man came back with the baby, the intoxicated man, when he came back with the baby, this woman got the baby. She said that the baby smelled of ammonia, like from urine and fecal matter, that his diaper was full, that he had a terrible diaper rash and blisters on his bottom and swelling to his genitals and on his bottom. There was also dog hair in his diaper, which I think is a little weird. She said that the first thing she did was change the baby out of that dirty diaper and give him a bath. One of the men told police that before the document thing came up, Shailene Ehlers came to the camper that the baby was now at to speak with those people. And she spoke to a man outside and told that man that having 3 dogs and a baby
it just wasn't working. So that's why she was like more willing to give up the baby. Police arrested Shailene Ehlers and Darren Urban and took them to the Benton County Sheriff's Office where they spoke to them. Now, Shailene and Darren backed up pretty much the same story that the people at the campground gave. So Shailene Ehlers and Darren Urban were both arrested and charged with endangering the welfare of a minor in the first degree and attempting to commit consideration for relinquishing minor for adoption. I think I'm probably more irritated than I should be about the charges. Those are 2D felonies, so in all likelihood, they probably won't go to prison. Not only that, but the endangering the welfare of a minor charge is because they gave their baby to an intoxicated man. And from what I can tell, it seems like that intoxicated man had the baby's best interest in mind more than the parents. I think that intoxicated man going and getting that baby is probably what saved this baby in this situation. And I almost feel bad to think that because I hate a person that drinks and drives or anything like that. But I think that this man probably, in all likelihood, saved this baby. That is, if the baby doesn't go right back to the parents that didn't want him to begin with. So what's your opinion on this case? This man, who was charged with the August 2021 murder of his 1-month-old daughter, accepted a plea deal. When I see the face of this 1-month-old named Zoe Dugan, I can't imagine how anyone could possibly hurt her. I can imagine how anyone, much less a parent, could harm such an innocent little person. She just looks so precious. So I can't imagine how in August 2021, Charles Dugan stopped his precious baby from breathing. I can't imagine how Charles Dugan made decisions that ended her life. And then, not only did he make decisions that ended her life, but he never even told the truth about what happened to her. Just before 9 p.m. on August 29th, 2021, police in Fayetteville were called to a home on Cants Drive for a 1-month-old who wasn't breathing. It was assumed, for whatever reason, that the 1-month-old might be suffering from cardiac arrest. Emergency personnel who were on the scene attempted life-saving measures, and Zoe was transported to Children's Northwest, where she was declared deceased. When police questioned Charles Dugan about what happened to his daughter, he had a multitude of stories. First, he told police that he propped a bottle in her mouth, and then when he came back to check on her in her crib, she wasn't breathing, and he thought that she had choked on her bottle, so he got her up and started trying to pat her on the back and clear whatever blockage she had. He said he saw milk coming from her nose, and he also said that he tried to call 911, but the call didn't connect, so he went to a neighbor's apartment where they called 911. During a second interview, Charles Dugan told police that he had the baby laying on his chest, and he fell asleep, and he woke up to the baby crying, so he didn't know if the baby fell directly to the floor or if she hit the coffee table and then fell to the floor, but she woke up crying. He picked her up, put her in her crib, and then 30 to 45 minutes later, he found her unresponsive in her crib. He also said that he never told anyone else about that series of events. Then both Zoe's mother and Charles Dugan said that Charles suffered from sleepwalking. He had at one point tried to body slam Zoe's mother, and so it was possible, they were saying, that he sleptwalked and did something to Zoe. There was another interview that followed that where Charles Dugan said that he didn't remember what happened to Zoe. I don't know. I kind of call BS. If he didn't remember, then why did he make up all the other stories instead of just saying that he didn't remember to begin with? I mean, if you didn't have any story to tell them, then I don't know why you didn't just say hey, I don't remember, and ended it with that, you know what I mean? Instead of telling all these other stories, because when Zoe's remains were sent to the state crime lab, it was discovered that she didn't choke on a bottle. She had so many injuries to her little body. She had rib fractures that were in stages of healing. She then had a head injury that the medical examiner said was caused by blunt trauma and rib fractures, both injuries which the medical examiner said
occurred within 24 hours of Zoe's death. So less than a day before Zoe died, she had her ribs broken and she had a head injury. But like I said, it's important to keep in mind this wasn't the only time that anything happened to Zoe's ribs, because she also had rib fractures that were at different stages of healing, meaning that she had broken ribs that had occurred before she even died, before the rib fractures that occurred within 24 hours of her dying. So like, along the way, she had rib fractures that happened at other times. Charles Dugan was charged with the murder of his daughter, Zoe Dugan. He was also charged with battery that happened to a nurse. And it's important to note, like this comment says, that even before any of this happened, Charles Dugan was actually charged with murdering a dog. He murdered a dog in a trailer and used carpet to wrap its body up. It was gruesome. I really don't even want to talk about it any more than that. But now Charles Dugan has accepted a plea deal. He pled guilty to second-degree murder and also second-degree battery. Again, that battery charge was the separate case that involved the nurse. But Charles Dugan was sentenced to serve 15 years in prison and then 15 more years suspended once he is released from prison on that second-degree murder charge. He was also sentenced to 6 years for that battery charge, but the two sentences are to run concurrently, so it's really inconsequential. I don't know. I just can't imagine why or how the murder of any child is worth only 15 years when people get dang near that for drug charges. This was a life. The judge in the case, Joanna Taylor, told Charles Dugan, Mr. Dugan, the court is heartbroken that you killed your baby. I can only imagine how beautiful that child was. The prosecutor in the case, Dennis Dean, said, the only person alive who knows what happened that tragic evening has now admitted guilt and been held accountable for his actions. This defendant never should have been put in the position of caring for a child. My plea to the community would be, if you suspect domestic violence in any form or fashion, please report it to law enforcement. Your voice alone could save a life. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's too late to do anything to save Zoe Dugan, but it's not too late to do something to save the next child. So what do you think about this sentence? Do you think 15 years is a fair sentence for the murder of a child? What happens when a child has two parents that won't protect them? March 6, 2020, police in Baxter County, Arkansas, arrested 35-year-old Bradley Urin and his wife, Jennifer Urin, who was 36 years old. Bradley was arrested and charged with 3 counts of rape. So when Bradley was arrested, the victims were Bradley's children, who were around 10 and 12 years old at the time of his arrest. The 2 victims told police that Bradley had assaulted them in certain ways. The victims also told police that their mother, Jennifer, knew about the abuse because they had told their mother about the abuse. And after telling their mother about the abuse, she did absolutely nothing. When she was first arrested, Jennifer denied having any knowledge that her children were being abused by their father, but she later admitted that they had told her of the abuse and she just chose to do nothing about it. After they were arrested, Bradley and Jennifer engaged in a tit for tat that I honestly cannot explain. They each tried to obtain orders of protection from the other. Jennifer claimed that Bradley had hit her several times and had tried to break her arm. She claimed that Bradley had threatened her life and the lives of her 3 children. She also claimed that Bradley had peepholes throughout the home where he would watch her and their children. For his part, Bradley claimed that Jennifer had tried to sell one of their children to a relative for $10,000. He also said that Jennifer was trying to, quote unquote, get him out of the picture. Bradley also claimed that Jennifer had friends that were criminals that she was trying to convince to off him. While Jennifer was able to bond out on her charge of permitting child abuse, Bradley, who had much more serious charges, stayed in jail where he continued to get in trouble. He got in multiple fights with other people in the jail, and in July 2023 got in trouble for exposing himself to a female inmate through the bean hole in his cell. He has several new cases pending from incidents within the jail. Also, it's important to note that Bradley Urin was a registered sex offender. Bradley was originally charged in 2005 when he was just 18 years old. He invited a 14-year-old to come to his home. He then held her at knife point and forced her to take her clothing off. At that time, Bradley was charged with sexual battery in another state. I don't know which state it was, but he obviously was found guilty or pled guilty because he was forced to register after that point. So Bradley's trial actually started earlier this week and went until August 12th, early this morning. From what I read, it was sometime around 2 a.m., and I'm assuming that's when the jurors finished their deliberations. During the trial, it actually came out that Jennifer's older son, Bradley's stepson, actually was told by his sisters what Bradley was doing, and he is the one that reported it to police. One of the victims testified that Jennifer didn't report Bradley because Jennifer was afraid of Bradley. Jennifer testified that Bradley had dislocated her elbow one time and had shot her in the chest with a BB gun. The older victim testified that the abuse started to her when she was in the 3rd grade and that she knew it was wrong and that she told her brother because she got tired of enduring the abuse. One of the victims also testified that Bradley told them that the reason he was doing this was so that they would know how to treat a man. So a Baxter County jury found Bradley Urin guilty of 3 counts of rape, and he was sentenced to 120 years in the Arkansas Department of Correction. This almost guarantees that Bradley Urin will have no more victims, at least outside of prison. Jennifer's charges are still pending, and honestly, I hope that the state doesn't drop the charges or doesn't take it easy on her, because Jennifer was told what happened and she allowed the abuse to continue. Those children trusted Jennifer enough to tell her the truth and trusted that she would help them, and she failed them. She failed her own children. Bradley Urin's parental rights were actually terminated, and I believe that the children are in a new home with people who love them and will protect them. One of them actually testified that they were happy in their new home and they don't want to go back to where they were living. Just keep these children in your thoughts and prayers as they continue their healing process. It cannot be easy.